Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and this is a one-on-one interview. I'm here with Troels Thøgersen to talk about Danish whiz kid Rasmus Højlund and his potential move to Manchester United. First of all, thank you very much for joining us, Troels. How are you doing?
Well, thank you for having me. It's all good. The transfer market is kicking off, so I guess everyone's excited around Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Troels is the editor at Tipsbladet newspaper in Denmark. So you are the person to speak to when it comes to Rasmus Højlund. Now, let's just get straight into it because a lot of people, including myself, haven't seen a lot of Rasmus Højlund. What type of player is he? What can United expect if this transfer is to be done? What will we get in terms of a player out of Rasmus Højlund?
Well, it's a funny thing that you say you haven't seen much of him. I don't think anyone has because he's really new, and in many ways he's quite raw in the professional game. So he was basically let go from Copenhagen. They didn't rate him as a starting player. They used him as a sub, so they sent him to Austria. He spent 6 months there, and then they basically sold him to Atalanta, and everything kicked off from there. So I think this is a really exciting young player. You can play him as a forward, you can play him in the middle, you can play him on the side if you want to. I think both left and right if you really wanted to, but he's played mostly in the central position. So I think the main traits are his physical strength and this acceleration and this pace he has. This is a really, really fast forward. This is a very aggressive forward as well. I think those are basically the main traits that he lives off right now. This is a guy that just never stops. He keeps going. He keeps going in the 88th minute as well. When his team is down, when things are looking bleak, this is a guy who'll still work for your team. So I think right now those are actually some of his most interesting characteristics so far.
That sounds very good. That's exactly what United need, players who are going to keep going. And you mentioned there, and I'll get straight to it because, there have been comparisons with Haaland. Now, I'm guessing most of them are from the part of the world that he's from and the fact that his name sounds a bit like Haaland. But when you say there, he's 6'3", which you didn't mention, but you said about his size and you talk about this speed and aggression. They are also things that Haaland is known for. Do you think that's a fair comparison? Obviously, maybe we're not talking the same level, we're obviously not. But in terms of a style of play, do you think those comparisons are fair?
Well, and they both have blonde hair right now.
Well, there you go. But
yeah. I think, to be honest, I think it's a bit fair to Holland. When Holland was 13, 14, 15 years old, like everyone in Scandinavia already knew that, and in professional football too, they knew that this guy would be amazing. He'd be a world-class player, without any doubt. Rasmus Højlund, he could walk the streets in Copenhagen. I think 12 months ago, no one would have recognized him. He's really come out of nothing basically. But I think in terms of football, his physical strength, his physical ability. Yeah, there are certain similarities, but I don't see Rasmus Højlund as nearly as complete a forward as Erling Haaland is right now. Haaland, he can just pretty much do everything. I still think I rate Højlund the most as a counter player or a player who's really strong in transitions. A player who still needs some space around him and at least in front of him to be effective. I think those are his. Right now, that's where he really excels. He needs to run at people. He needs to have that space. And obviously, at United, you need to have a player who's really good at playing in small spaces because in half of your games you're gonna have an opponent sitting in their own penalty box, and you need players who can do that job as well. But the good thing about Rasmus Højlund is he's really good at learning. He's really developing. I mean, he's improved so much since he left Copenhagen. He's not the same player at all as he was just 18 months ago. So there's a lot happening to this young man. We can see it in the national team as well. He had his first few games last year, and he looked exciting. He had this aggressive this aggressive aura that this guy just keeps going no matter what. But he had problems controlling the ball. He had certain problems with the pace and the technique. But already this year he's looking better. He's looking way better in Atalanta as well. So you can hope for him growing even better and even learning to be part of that. Part of that game where you have to keep possession. You have to break down opponents who sit back, which is also important at United.
Yeah, interesting that the rise of him. It does seem almost, I wouldn't say unique because you do see that, but to go from being basically dropped and released in Denmark to sort of 2 years later, we're looking at Manchester United. Rumours anywhere between sort of 40 and 60 million pounds. That's quite a dramatic rise in his profile, isn't it? Like you said, the fact that he's learning very quickly is obviously a great thing for Man United. Do you think he's ready for Man United? Obviously, we talk about his growth here, but when you put all those things together, you look at the details of it. Last season or in 2022, he was still playing for Copenhagen, and like you said, not decided that he wasn't quite right for them. Now we're talking a team that is, obviously a Man United that we want to improve, but we got to the final of the FA Cup, we finished third in the league, we won the Carabao Cup. It's another jump as well from Atalanta, isn't it? Do you think he's ready for that jump?
Well, in some ways he is. I think the reason why he's developing so well as he is these months is obviously his footballing ability, his potential, and the sporting director, the coaches at Copenhagen, everyone's recognized that. Of course they were wrong. Of course they should have played him. Everyone sees that now. There's no argument about that. But I think one of the most important traits is this personality that he has. He's not a guy who sit quietly in the corner of the dressing room and listen to what he's being told and not speaking a word and being afraid of standing out. This is sometimes even a brash guy, I'd say, using an American word. This is a guy who doesn't mind being heard, who wants to be part of something, who wants to speak his opinion, who wants to be better. And that's also what you see translated, I think, into his game on the pitch, that this is a guy, if there's something he's not good enough at yet, something he needs to improve, he's going to work his behind off to become good enough in this case for Manchester United. But, in terms of being a starter for Manchester United, right now, I'd say no. This is not a guy you can play in the starting 11 in every game. In the next season, if you want to, you obviously want to chase Manchester City. Makes sense. That's a big job. You can bring him from the bench. Sure, I think this is a really good young man. This is a young man who'll do everything he can to develop and to help his team. But I don't think he's a starting player yet. He's just too raw. It's almost inevitable that there's going to be a setback at some point. He's gonna hit hard times again. It's just natural. Every player basically has to deal with that. You can just see what happened with Marcus Rashford. So this will happen, and I don't think this is a guy you can just buy and just expect him to bag 30 goals for you next season and win you the title. He can't do that by himself now.
Okay. Well, I think that's good to know because, we've heard these, excuse me, sorry. We've heard these rumours of Harry Kane and, Victor Osimhen and players who are slightly more established in their career. Obviously, Kane a lot more established and, Osimhen somewhere in the middle. Of those being the kind of first choice striker who would come in. I think we've also seen in recent days people talking about Daniel Levy not wanting to sell Kane to a Premier League rival, and I think some United fans, and I've been sort of lulled into this as well, have almost got to the point where we thought, okay, well maybe it will just be Højlund, maybe he could be the striker next season. If we can't get Kane, it could be just Højlund. But I like that you're telling us basically it's possible he could maybe be good enough for that, but this is a raw player that is still very much at the start of his sort of progressive journey as a player. And I think to have that expectation and that knowledge will now change the way me and, you know, maybe people watching sort of see this transfer. He is a backup. He is the sort of player that, you know, I didn't know this kind of meteoric rise that he was on, but it's good to know the full details. Just in terms of, obviously, like you said, I guess his reputation 2 years ago was here, and now his reputation is here. What is the level of hype around him currently in Denmark and in Italy? Because is it almost people going, what do you mean he's, you know, we thought he was no good, and now you kind of have to admit that maybe he is. Where do people see his career going? What is the level of hype around him at the moment?
No, let's start off with Denmark. It's for sure the hype is enormous right now. He played a couple of really good games for the national team. That's what most people watch. And he was basically dubbed the next Preben Elkjær, which is he's a former striker in the Serie A back in the 80s. He played really well for the Danish national team at the World Cup in '86. He's the best striker that's been in Denmark, in like 30, 40 years. And this guy is seen as the next one. Because he's so promising, but also because of this outgoing, outward-facing personality that he has. That, you know, this is a guy who wants to achieve something. He's not afraid to say it, and he puts his word into action and into work. He really works his butt off, to be frank. So the hype is enormous, and you know, it's not only Manchester United; it's other clubs as well being mentioned. Barcelona have definitely thought of him. They have him on a list of possibilities. I know several other clubs have as well, like Bayern Munich. They've thought too. So Manchester United are not alone up there, and I'm sure that, you know, people in Denmark expect him to one day, perhaps quite soon, play somewhere bigger than Atalanta. And we shouldn't underestimate Atalanta. They've been one of the best sides in the Serie A for the last 5 years. They play some of the most attractive, most interesting, most cutting-edge football in Europe. Even if they don't have the biggest individual talents, they are a really good football side. They're really good at recruiting. So when someone comes out of Atalanta, it's interesting. And I'm sure in Atalanta he's at around, if you count all tournaments now, he's at around 10 goals this season, and surely the expectation is if he continues at Atalanta, he's gonna, you know, get 15 or get 20 next season, for sure. He's also being followed by Juventus as a possible new forward for them. So, you know, it's that level we're at right now. So I'm not surprised by the Manchester United rumors at all. I think, as you say, he could do it for Manchester United. I'm not ruling it out, absolutely not, because this is a guy who's grabbed every opportunity he had since he left Copenhagen. But I think just the more realistic path, and also with Erik ten Hag's approach to developing players and seeing football, you know, I think he'd introduce him slowly in the next season, play him, you know, more and more often, give him positions in the starting 11, and then, you know, let him grow from there. But I think still he's a raw player. You do have world-class players in Manchester United, also in offensive positions. So, you know, he's going to have to compete. He's going to have to grow. But I think in time, yeah, he could be a starter for sure.
Brilliant. I love that about his personality as well. I didn't realise that he has got this sort of really outgoing, you know, driven to improve, driven to get a better personality. And it really helps as well. Maybe it won't help him on the pitch, but it certainly helps in terms of liking him that he's a United fan. He said earlier this year, he said, now that you ask, I will not hide the fact that I'm a huge Manchester United fan. So personally, it would be one of the biggest things for me. But of course, that doesn't mean I would turn down other big clubs if offers come at some point. So you can almost see it there, can't you? Yes, he's a United fan, but he's also talking about other big clubs wanting him as well. He's got that self-confidence, and I think United need a little bit of that. We see too much at times, our strikers in particular seem to have this, hopefully something happens this today, and if it doesn't, we'll walk off and we'll be all right. He seems like the sort of bloke that is obsessed with scoring goals and getting better, which is, obviously fantastic. Right, thank you so much for coming on, Troels. Thank you for taking us through the details of Rasmus Højlund. I feel like I know a lot more now than I did before. So thank you for enlightening us, basically. Cheers.
Well, thanks, guys.
Right, make sure you check out Troels at the Tipsbladet. He's the editor there, of course. Check him out on Twitter as well. We'll put his link to his Twitter in the description. Thank you for joining us. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And also check out Rasmus Højlund. What do you think of him? Is he time to come into Manchester United? Or do we need someone who is ready to start every single game next season? Get your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you in a bit.